Hi, good afternoon, everyone, and thank you for joining us in today's session on OnCost estimating and reporting. My name is Rachel Pickens, and my goal for you today is to learn more about the OnCost estimating platform. We're going to take a look at how to create a new estimate, how to save that to a project within ConstructionSuite. We're going to explore all of the different options and columns and different kind of tools that you have available within your estimate. We're then going to tell you or show you how we can actually use some really nice professional looking reports and proposals that you can provide for your clients or others on your team. And then lastly, we're going to show you how we can manage our change orders as well as setting up a template so that we can repeat the process we've already begun to perfect. So a lot of information for us to cover today, and I want to thank you again for attending. Right now what we're looking at when you first open the program is going to be the Today screen. The Today screen is going to provide you a summary of your most recent activity or your important information. Your recent projects are going to be displayed as well as the statuses for those projects. You'll have access to your activities and to-dos that are up and coming or overdue. These activities are coming directly from your calendar as well as from the schedules that you create in ConstructionSuite. And we're going to really look into those specifically in detail on the scheduling webinar. So if you're interested in learning more about that, make sure to check it out. The financial graph, though, is going to be important for today's session in particular because it's involving the estimate information. On your financial graph, you're going to see details coming from both the estimates as well as the information that is pulled or integrated from QuickBooks, which is the tool that we'll use for our accounting side. Shown on the financial graph is going to be your base estimates and estimated values, which are displayed in red and green. So if we take a look at this project, Lot 191, Baldwin Park, the value in red is going to represent the original contract sum. So that's what your client's agreeing to. That's the original amount of that estimate. Whereas the green is going to be your estimated value, which includes the base estimate plus any change orders that you've added as well. So it's going to give you an idea or give you a good idea to see how those change orders are going to affect the project. You'll notice that with Lot 191, we have a slight increase between our base estimate and our estimated value because of positive change orders. Whereas with Lot 13, Baldwin Park, we can see that there's actually a decrease in our estimated value because of negative change orders on the job. So you can see how that's going to affect your project. In blue, we're going to represent all of our actual costs, which is essentially what we've paid so far on the job. Your actual costs are either entered by hand or imported from QuickBooks. In today's session, we're going to take a look at how to hand enter those amounts. So if you're not integrating with QuickBooks, we're going to show you today how you can record that information. If you plan on using QuickBooks and integrating with ConstructionSuite, we're going to take a look at that in the QuickBooks integration webinar, which is going to specifically review how the information is transferred back and forth, and that's on Wednesday at 4 p.m. Eastern Time. One other point that I want to bring your attention to here before we begin creating a job and setting up our estimate is this Estimating tab. In the Estimating tab in ConstructionSuite, you'll find all of your recently edited estimates as well as your estimating templates. Recent estimates with check marks are going to represent the primary estimates that you have on file. For a project within ConstructionSuite, you can have multiple estimates. So if you like to keep track of estimates and any revisions, you can have multiple estimates per job. Notice that Lot 13 has about 4, but only one of those is the primary estimate. And the primary estimate is the one that's going to display on your financial graph. So that's going to be the difference that you'll see with those that are marked with check marks and those that do not have a check mark. On the lower half of the screen, you'll find your estimating templates. We're going to provide several different estimate templates for you as a ConstructionSuite user or trial user. You're welcome to create your own estimate templates and store them in this location or modify the existing templates. So if at any point, for example, you wanted to take one of our templates and turn it into your own or modify that template, you would be able to find it in this Estimating Templates window. Right-click on the template that you'd like to modify and select Edit Template. This option will open the template, and any changes that you make are going to override that template for the future. So it's going to keep those changes as permanent. If you simply double-click or launch the template, you'll be able to save that estimate to a project rather than affecting the original template. So this is where you'll be able to access and modify these. We're actually going to come back to this a little bit later on in the session as well, but just to give you an idea of where that's located, it's going to be in the estimating sidebar. Last detail that's important to know, specifically when it comes to estimating, is going to be that we include a full items database as a part of the ConstructionSuite software. You can access the items database from a number of different places, but one of the most popular ways to do so is going to be through this estimating tab and then selecting the items database. ConstructionSuite is going to include cost information from RSMeans, which is a company that collects cost data for materials and labor and equipment on a nationwide and local average. To select which cost book you're going to be using, you would use this selector, and the cost books that you have the ability to choose from are going to depend on the software version that you have installed. So if you have a residential or a commercial or a green version of the software, your cost books are going to vary. Currently, we're looking at the commercial cost book. And once you select your cost book, you'll be able to choose or set a multiplier in the upper right-hand corner, which allows you to filter your prices or set your prices to a more specific average. For example, when you first load a cost book, it's going to give you a nationwide average. But if you select that multiplier drop-down, you'll be able to select to filter this by your company location or the specific project location if you're in an estimate. If you're located in Canada, you're able to use one of these filters, or enter a zip code if you're in the U.S., and this will adjust the prices to your local average. Within the cost book on the left-hand side, you're going to see all of the different item breakdowns. This is going to be structured in this CSI 16 or 50 master format. When you expand these categories or subcategories, you'll be able to see the additional details in the breakdown. You can also use that search bar to quickly navigate throughout the entire database. The right-hand side is going to list all of the different items. Now, depending on your screen size, we may want to change the columns that are displayed. So if I right-click anywhere on the column header, I can determine which columns are going to be shown by default. So for example, my description column is pretty blank. I'm going to go ahead and uncheck that so I get a little bit more of a full view when it comes to my estimate, when it comes to my items. Now, when you expand one of these items, it's going to give you the material, labor, and any other quote information that RSMeans provides for that particular item. For this piece of trim, we're getting both the material and labor quote. The nice thing about the items database is that you're able to add your own quotes. So if you find that in your area 33 cents is not common, or perhaps it's too low or too high, then you would be able to actually add your own quote. Be sure to set the classification to the appropriate class, so either material, labor, equipment. You can include vendor information so that you can remember where you found that quote. Set an issue date, that would be today's date or the date that you found that quote. The expiration date would be the date that it's going to expire, if there's some sort of limit. And then you can include your cost breakdown as well. So let's just say that in my area, the lowest I can find is 35 cents. You'll notice that it will create a new quote for that particular material item that I can also use in my estimate. Another thing to mention within your items database is your assemblies tab. So if you go back on the left-hand sidebar and select assemblies, many of the cost books provided by RSMeans are going to also provide assemblies, which are essentially kits, or kind of a list of multiple items. For example, if we're looking at interiors, I can determine what a common stair construction kit is going to include by locating that item in assembly. So for example, for this first item, I can see that a typical concrete stair without a landing, about 12 risers, is going to include these 4 items. So you can see that these kits come kind of pre-built, showing you the common quantity and cost for each of those items. to create that unit, that one stair, that one flight of stairs. Again, those assemblies are going to be included in various cost books. So some cost books include those and some don't, but they're a great tool for including an entire kind of kit or assembly of items. Now you can also create your own cost books. So if you're preferring to use your own supplier pricing, or perhaps you have a cost database that you've created or kept on your own, then you're also able to create your own cost book within ConstructionSuite and use that as well. To create your own cost book, you would either select New and then New Cost Book, provide a name, and then begin building by creating your items, or you could actually import your cost book using a CSV spreadsheet import. So a CSV file is going to be a typical kind of Excel spreadsheet. We would be able to import that into ConstructionSuite so that you can create your own cost book as well. And we have those formats that are required here at UDA. So if that's something of interest to you, feel free to reach out to me. Again, my name is Rachel, and I can be reached at rpickens@uda1.com. Or feel free to just give our number, that 800-700-8321 number, a call, and anybody will be happy to provide that structure for you. Let's go ahead and move along back to the Today screen and go through a typical process of getting started with a new project and creating an estimate for that project. The easiest way to create a project in ConstructionSuite is to simply click on the New button and select New Project. In this window, you have a project wizard, which would allow you to include details like your name or project type. You can include details regarding the client or address information. The more information you enter, the more or the better it's going to be down the road. The information that you enter in your project wizard is going to show up later on documents or reports that we create from ConstructionSuite. So again, the more you enter now, the more it's going to save you time later. You can, of course, come back and edit this information at any point. I'm going to go ahead and say that we're building a new home for the Simpsons. Project type is a way for you to filter projects in ConstructionSuite. So if you do a variety of projects, whether it's a variety of work, whether it's remodeling like commercial, new construction, whatever it might be, you're able to create different project types to organize that data. Project types are also going to be linked to your workflows and dimensions tool within the system, and we're going to show you a little bit more about what those would include in just a moment. You are able to customize or add to this list. So if you don't see one that you use, you can certainly create your own. In this scenario, I'm going to use my single-family residential. Project numbers are automatically determined. And then you can also establish your client. If you have not yet created or entered the client's information in ConstructionSuite, you can see that you can simply add a new contact, include details like work and email. Contact group allows you to choose the type of contacts. So if they're clients or leads or subcontractors or vendors, you can easily differentiate between those using the group tool. Include phone numbers, address details. And once you're finished, go ahead and save and close to complete that new contact. If you're building the project or if the job takes place at the client's residence, you can simply copy that information into the project address as well, or retype that depending on what you prefer. Now, project group and status are ways for you, or additional filters. So for those who are building several units within a certain complex or neighborhood or school or whatever it might be, project groups allow you to group or organize your projects within ConstructionSuite and use those for filters later on. So keep that in mind as far as kind of collecting projects that are similar. Project status would be things like they're in the estimator, in progress, or bidding. You can also include lender details. And then once finished, click Next. Now the next piece of this wizard is going to really populate or really come into play when we create our proposal for our client. So in this window, you can include details like your project description and any special conditions that are worth noting. You can provide directions, lot number, development information. All of these details would be pulled through to the proposal that you can submit to your owner or client. The last screen or section of the project wizard is to complete your dimensions. Now, dimensions are going to be specifically used in estimating in that they are tied to the project type. So remember that the project type I selected for the Simpsons residence was a single-family residential project type. Because I had chosen that project type, it automatically provided this standard set of dimensions for my project. You can customize this list as well, so you can certainly adjust the dimensions that you see here. But for example, what I would be able to do is include the square footage for my main floor, second floor, third floor, whatever it might be. You'll notice that you can actually have them total, so we can see that the total finished area is actually the sum of A and B and C. Include details for a garage, deck, and other details. So again, you can add this information as well. Once you're finished, we'll go ahead and complete that wizard. It'll create the project in ConstructionSuite. Now the dimensions are going to come into play later on when we actually begin to create our estimate as well. Dimensions allow you to quickly include quantities for your projects. So again, we're going to see that tool again. Now once the project has been created, you'll be able to locate all of the details, estimate information, scheduling and change orders. All of these details are going to be updated as you continue to make changes to this project. Your activities and to-dos are going to be filtered to this project alone. Your related contacts are going to show the names and relationships of all of the contacts added to your project. So you can see that Homer and National Bank have already been added as contacts. When I begin assigning contacts to my estimate as my subcontractors, they're going to see this list automatically update as well. The project workflow is going to be another piece that's going to relate to your project type. So again, because I chose single-family residential, this workflow has been predetermined for me. Your workflow is going to be like your recipe guide for a project. It's going to outline the process that a typical project might take for this type. It's going to provide an outline of all the steps that are necessary to complete. So at any point, anyone involved in this project with access to ConstructionSuite would be able to see exactly where this project stands and what is remaining. It also allows you to link to certain templates. So you'll notice that with the Create Estimate link, we could actually have this launch our designated estimate template as well, so that anyone who's creating or following these steps will be able to find all of the necessary files. All files in ConstructionSuite are stored within this Files window. So this is where you'll be able to find all of your estimates, project files, and details that are created. Let's go ahead and begin by creating a new estimate. So I'm going to click on this Create Estimate link, in which case we get a new wizard. I can begin creating a new estimate or select from one of our templates and then choose the appropriate template to use. Now I'm going to use in this scenario my residential sample so we can see what one might look like, especially when creating reports. The next section is to make sure that your project information is correct or to update or change it. And then lastly, you can enter any sales tax as well. That estimate opens, the very first thing that you're going to see on the page is going to be your project totals page, which is the summary of your estimate. Your estimate is set up into 3 levels of detail. You have your categories, subcategories, and then items. Categories are going to have their own page, so notice that planning, foundation, and framing are all categories, and they have their own tabs at the bottom of the screen. Subcategories are listed underneath those, and subcategories can be broken into an additional level of detail called items. For example, if I click on foundation, I'm now looking at my foundation category sheet, And I can see there's a difference between the footers labor and footers materials subcategories. Footers labor is a subcategory set to a lump sum method, which means that I can enter a single quantity and cost for that subcategory, whereas footers materials is set to a detailed method, which allows me to see item level detail. So it gives me a little bit more flexibility with kind of entering the breakdown of costs. Either option is available. You're not required to use either one. To add items or adjust the template, so if you are wanting to make changes, perhaps you're using one of the templates that we provide and information is unnecessary, or you wanted to add to this or change the order or whatever it might be, then you're able to modify the estimate by right-clicking on these sections and performing functions like cutting, copying, pasting, deleting, moving up and down so you can rearrange. You can add new subcategories or categories by clicking on the Add Subcategory links that you see here and providing the name. On the category pages themselves, so if I go to, let's see, concrete slab materials, for example, I can add new items to this particular subcategory, either by hand, where I just type those in myself, or I can insert those items from my database. Now, the items that I currently have on this estimate show quantities and costs already. These quantities and costs are just a part of the template, so or just a part of my sample information. In all of our templates, these are going to be all zeros. So you're going to start with basically a clean blank slate. It's not going to have pre-populated quantities and costs, but this gives you an idea of what one might look like or how the cost might be structured. To include quantities and costs, you would be able to either hand enter those or include those from your database. So if I select Add Item and then Insert Item from Database, it's going to open the items database we were just looking at a moment before. So for example, in this scenario, I can go through and actually search for backfill. You'll see that when I search for backfill, it'll show me all of the items that contain that name. I can choose the appropriate item. In this scenario, notice that it's going to give me only labor and equipment quotes. To insert that information into your estimate, you would simply use the arrow to the right of that price and provide the quantity to insert. Once you include that information in your estimate, you'll see that it's going to appear on your estimate at the very end of that subcategory. All items coming from the database are going to be included in blue. So it's a quick way for you to identify which items are coming from our database and which items are inserted by hand. When coming from RS Beans, all items are going to contain notes. So the column to the far left of the name column is going to be where you can add additional notes. These notes can be included on proposals or included in different reports. So there's a lot of functionality as far as being able to include additional detail. But when you include an item from RS Means, the note is going to include details like the daily output and man hours, the types of crews, the hourly rates, and so on. You'll notice that when I inserted that item, it included both the quantity and the cost as well as the unit. Now let's go ahead and go back to our project totals page and take a look at our floor covering section. So to navigate throughout the estimate, one of the easiest ways to do so is to use this drop-down menu at the top where you can quickly navigate between your categories and subcategories. Under floor covering, I'm taking a look at my hardwood flooring or vinyl or different kind of materials here. So let's just go back and take a look at the dimensions tool we were focusing on earlier. In your estimate, you have a few different columns displayed as default, but to add additional columns, we'll right-click on the column header and select Show or Hide Columns. In this window, we can turn on columns like classification, so you can differentiate between materials, labor, equipment, subcontractor, and other. You can add resources. We'll get to that in a moment. Markup and sales tax columns. So there's a lot of different functionality, but let's go ahead and take a look specifically at our dimensions. In your dimensions tool, you can reference the dimensions that we looked at earlier. So let's just say that we wanted to have hardwood flooring throughout the entire main floor of this home. I've already determined the square footage for that main floor. So all I have to do is assign this main floor dimension to this item, or to all items in this category, and it'll automatically update the quantity that I entered earlier. So remember that when I had set up the project, I had entered 1,200 square feet for that main floor. So if I were determining the amount of the quantity for hardwood flooring, I could assign that dimension tool to update that quantity. You can adjust those dimensions in your estimating tab to the far right. So if you were to select edit dimensions, this would pull up the same window we had seen when first creating or editing the project, and you'd be able to update the values in units or add additional dimensions here. Let's go back now to our project totals page and scroll down to the very bottom of the estimate. At the bottom of each estimate is going to be your company overhead and margin sheet, which allows you to calculate a profit on top of your project subtotal. Currently, our project subtotal is listed at about $367,000 with no overhead or profit at this point. So what I can do is select my company overhead and margin sheet and add either a percentage or a dollar value on top of the project subtotal. For example, if my overhead was going to be about 8%, I would be able to include that percentage and it will automatically calculate that 31 grand. You can also add a line item or a specific value. So for contingency, let's just say that I want to set aside $3,000 for contingency. I would be able to type that in as well. And again, it's going to add that to the project total. In the upper right corner, notice how my project total is now updated to $402,000. In addition to setting your company overhead and margin, you're also able to set markup in two additional ways. You have the ability to set line item markup. So if you wanted to mark up different items at different rates, you would be able to do so by turning on the line item markup column, which is found in your cost and markup section. In this line item markup window, you can add a specific percentage or dollar value to that item only or to all items within that particular category. So if these materials needed to be marked up at 10%, I can simply enter 10% for all of those. It'll update all of the items within that particular subcategory. Now the other option is to actually set a classification markup. So in this scenario, if I were wanting to create or make sure that all items that were marked as a material throughout the entire estimate had that 10% markup, then I would be able to do so by using this Set Classification Markup tool found in my Estimating tab. In this window, I can add that 10% markup across the board for all materials. I can also set a labor or subcontractor or equipment markup as well. This will mean that all items throughout my subcategories or throughout my entire estimate will automatically have that 10%. So notice, for example, that wall framing materials now has that 10% added as well. You can determine an item's classification by showing that column on your estimate. So if you're unsure as to why something may not be included, be sure that the classification is set to the proper setting. So it's set as material versus labor or subcontractor or something else. The right-hand summary sidebar in ConstructionSuite is going to show you a quick breakdown of your costs. The costs that you see broken down here are going to be the same breakdown that is going to display on your financial graph. So we can see our base estimate being that original contract sum. Our estimated value is going to be the same unless we have any change orders. Our actual costs show us what we have paid so far, so you can see that this information is going to summarize your costs. Underneath that is your cost by classification. So you're able to set or see your total material, labor, equipment, or subcontractor costs. The cost by type is going to show you a different breakdown, and this breakdown is going to be concerning the type column of your estimate. Let's hop on over to our plumbing systems now and take a look at our plumbing fixtures. So in many cases, plumbing fixtures may be set as an allowance for your client. So your client is allowed to choose which materials they want to use for a given, a given allowance amount. So right now, for example, in this particular scenario, I've set about $4,000 as an allowance or to this particular subcategory. To set it as an allowance, I would change the estimate or the type column from estimate to allowance. This is going to shade the subcategory in light blue, so it's going to easily distinguish those items that are set as allowances against those that are set as estimates or options or change orders. On the right-hand side, you're going to see that the cost by type are now showing $4,400 in that allowance category. It's including the 10% in this case, so be careful to, or keep in mind that the 10% markup is included in that allowance amount. You could certainly change that to 0, though, if you do not wish for it to have a classification or material markup. Next thing about allowances are that you can run a report to create a list of all of the allowances for your client. So in your report tab at the top of ConstructionSuite, you can generate a customer report to show all of the items in the estimate that are set as an allowance. Let's go ahead and let's go ahead and create that report just so you can see what it looks like. So we'll go ahead and select Customer Reports, Allowances Report. That's going to take a moment to save the estimate and allow us to create a report for our client that is going to include all of the items that are allowances and their budgeted amounts. In this window, you have the ability to choose which columns are displayed for the client, some additional details like what's included in your total cost, and that will create a report in OnPoint, which is our word processor or our reporting tool that will summarize that information. So you can see in this scenario that we only have the one item for plumbing fixtures as an allowance. But we can now send that over to Homer so he can approve those or so that he can have that information on hand. To send information from ConstructionSuite, you can either email directly from ConstructionSuite, which would attach this document as a PDF and allow you to send it to Homer, or you can actually upload it to Construction Online. So Construction Online is going to be one of our project collaboration tools that includes a really beautiful client portal that allows you to constantly keep the client updated on job progress. By saving this document to Construction Online, you're going to create a PDF copy and make that available on Construction Online so that your client, in this case Homer, would be able to preview or download that file as well. In addition to setting items as allowances, you also have the ability to set options, which are going to be more considered as upgrades or kind of additional things that they can add, but they don't affect the project total. So for example, let's just look at fireplaces and trim. We've got this prefabricated unit, and we've got these different sizes. So what I could do is actually create a different subcategory for each of these prefabricated units. So I'm going to copy this and then paste. So I have two sections for prefabricated units. And I'm going to delete two of these rows. So we've got kind of the 36-inch option, and we'll say that we've got the 42-inch option. So we've got these kind of two different options here. Now, as of right now, we can see that both of these items are contributing to my project total. So to avoid that, I can change the type column from estimate to an option, which again is going to shade that a different color, and it's going to remove that amount from the project total. So basically, what comes standard with this project or with this floor plan or whatever it might be the 36-inch fireplace. But if they're interested in upgrading, they can go with the 42-inch fireplace, and it's going to be $1,641 rather than the $1,069. So it kind of gives you the chance to include that. Just like the allowance report, we can create a customer report to share the options that are available. So you can include all of these for your clients as well. Again, notice on the right-hand side that all items marked as options are automatically included in this cost by type breakdown. So we've taken a look at creating options, creating allowances. We've taken a look at how to add markup at this point. We've gone through and kind of inserted costs from our database, updated our quantities and costs using dimensions. Let's go ahead now and take a look at how we can present this to the client. So if I were finished with my estimate and I'm ready to present this as to my client for approval, then I would be able to generate a proposal document using our proposal wizard. This option is found in the Reports tab, and when you select that option, it's going to save the estimate so it includes all of the most recent changes, and it's going to give you the option to create a beautiful, professional-looking presentation for your client. In the proposal wizard, you'll choose between the types of templates, so a residential or a commercial template. The next screen will make sure that you have the correct contact and project details. You can also include your own logo or letterhead. To edit that document, you'll want to click on the Edit Letterhead, which will then close this proposal wizard and open the letterhead template so that you can add your own letterhead. I believe as a part of the system, we actually include our own Eagle Rock construction, so if you notice that you're seeing Eagle Rock, it's going to most likely be one of our default custom sample templates. The next section is to choose the layout for your proposal. We're going to go ahead and start with option 1. In this window, you can see that the scope of work and the special conditions that we had entered in the beginning when creating the project are now included. The next section is where we can include our base price information. So if we wanted to list out the base price details, we'll be able to do so on this window. Next, we can choose which dimension. So if we wanted to include the breakdown of the square footage, we can choose which dimensions are going to be included in that document. The last step is to include your project total report. Your project totals report is going to list or include the breakdown of your estimate, and you're going to have several different options. We have many ConstructionSuite users who provide a very detailed breakdown for their clients. We have other users who provide a very simple breakdown. So really, the option is up to you as how you prefer to present that information, and you can do so in a number of different ways. There's a lot of flexibility here. First, I want to decide how your company overhead and margin is going to be included, or if it is going to be included. So in this scenario, you can see that you're including company overhead and margin either listed separately or prorated into your categories, which is going to take the value of your company overhead and margin, mine's about $35,000 or $40,000, and it's going to divide it evenly amongst the rest of my estimate if I have the prorated option checked. We can include our notes. So again, if we wanted to use the notes, which are that left-hand column of the estimate, you can check which notes are going to be included. And then below that, you have a few different options. These are going to get more into the how much detail to include. So this is going to give you a lot of flexibility. The last step is to choose some additional reference lists to include for suppliers, subcontractors. And once you're finished, you'll go ahead and create that document. Now on this very first page, we can see that we're looking at our cover page, which is going to show us the details between the company, the date and information. All of the fields in blue that you see are going to be auto-populating fields. So on my template, they're very generic, but when I save those to a project like I've done so with this proposal, they automatically update with my contact and project information so that I don't have to spend the time retyping it. Below that, you'll see all of the details between the owner and contractor. The date and the project information are automatically updated. Your scope of work and special conditions, your dimensions, and your base price, all of these details are included, so you can see it's just nice and professional. We didn't have to do anything to get that there. It just basically created that automatically through that wizard. Below that, you'll see your project total. So this is going to give you the breakdown of your project coming from the estimate. Again, you've got a lot of flexibility for how much detail. So many people don't like to include all of the subcategories. You can have that information actually hidden before creating it, or you can certainly make changes after the fact. So you can see, like I'm doing here, the reports are fully customizable after the fact as well. So you can run through, you can add additional text, change formatting, whatever you prefer to do. The very bottom of the proposal is going to show your grand total and a place for your client to sign and accept. Again, you can share this via email or you can upload to Construction Online. But now you've got that really beautiful, clean-looking proposal that summarizes all of the information from our estimate, and we've done that in a few seconds rather than having to do so by typing it all out by hand or including basically a copy of our Excel spreadsheet. So it gives us a really nice chance to be able to include a nice presentation package for our client. Now, in addition to the presentation package, also say that you've reviewed the proposal and they're ready to sign off. It's something that they want to do. They want to go ahead and move forward, so you'll need a contract. At this point, you can create a contract using one of the contracts we provide in the software. If you go back to the main ConstructionSuite system and select your Contracts and Docs section from the left sidebar, you'll see all of your recently edited contracts as well as all of the templates that are provided. In the Contracts section, we'll have several included for you to use. You can certainly use these contracts. You can make your own or you can customize these. I'm going to go ahead and start with my fixed amount contract. The first thing that will appear is your document management wizard, where you'll select your contact and project. Again, you can insert your letterhead. When that opens, you'll notice that all of the fields in blue are automatically populated with the correct project and contact information. Below that, in the contract body, you'll see additional blue fields, which are going to be not going to be auto-populating fields. These are basically areas in the contract that we are bringing to your attention to update yourself. So be sure to read through these contracts. Many of these items are going to need to be updated to determine the correct number of payments or whatever it might be. So kind of make sure to read through those, update those as well. But you'll see that they're very nice, detailed, already existing contracts that are legally binding. You can, of course, add to those. So if you wanted to include additional clauses or details, you can certainly adjust those as necessary. But they provide a great starting point. And again, you can send those as emails, attach it along with your proposal, or upload to Construction Online. So back in the project itself, if we click back to the project list and select Simpson's Residence, we'll see that the project overview is updated just a bit. We can see in the bottom right that all of our files are saved within this location. Our estimate data is now updated to show our base estimate and our actual cost, or our material, labor, and equipment breakdown. Back in the estimate, we can also begin assigning our subcontractors. So if I were to right-click and show hide columns, I can display my resource column, which allows me to determine the subcontractors or vendors or whoever it might be that are responsible for completing these actions. So for example, in framing, I can select my resource column and choose the contact that's going to be responsible for completing this work. We'll say that Bishop & Brothers Framing is the framing subcontractor that I'll use. Notice that I'm getting a prompt that they have expired or soon to expire insurance. So ConstructionSuite is also going to prompt you with expiring insurance notifications. And you can add those details in the contact overview. So if I go to ConstructionSuite, select Contacts, and then Bishop & Brothers Framing, their certificate information is going to be found in this location. So this is where I can modify or add certificate or adjust the expiration dates for those certificate information. For your vendors, for example, floor system materials, if I click on the first item and select one of my, let's see, we'll go ahead and choose Abernathy Brothers Supply. I can easily apply all of the items in the subcategory to the same resource, so I don't have to do that for every single item. The nice thing about this as well is that if you're using the same subcontractors or vendors, or if they're typically common or the same ones, you could actually designate these resource relationships in your estimate template so that you don't have to go through and assign these for each and every job. So if you let's just say that you have a special relationship with Abernathy Brothers and you're always going to get your materials for framing from them, you can go ahead and designate them as the resource for your template. You can always override that, so if something were to change for a particular job, you can always update the resource relationship. That's definitely going to be a time saver in the end. Estimate data, you're able to create additional reports, one of those being your vendor reports, which would allow you to create a request for quote. So for example, if I were wanting to find, or if I wanted to submit basically a request for quote for my plumbing systems, I would be able to create that document and send it to multiple plumbing subcontractors in the area and have them complete that form. In this window, I can choose which sections, display certain columns, and also include certain classifications. So if I just wanted to show, labor subcontract or labor classifications. Choose which vendors I'm going to send this to. So I'm going to search for my plumbers. When I select multiple subcontractors or vendors, it's going to create a different report for each of those so that they're going to have their own name. You'll see that Steve Allen and James Foster are two different plumbers, so it's going to create that document for each of those for the plumbing systems. I can send that via email, or I can upload to Construction Online and make it available there. In addition to creating the request for quote, you're also able to create materials lists. So if you wanted to provide that to your team in the field, your project managers or superintendents or whoever it might be, you'd be able to create a materials list which would summarize all of the items that are marked as materials. You could create purchase orders or subcontracts in this way as well, or create a proposal request for change orders. So there's a lot of ways that these tools are going to allow you to create nice looking vendor reports depending on the resources that you establish. We've created our resource, or now that we've assigned our resources, and we've completed the contract. Let's go ahead and say that we're ready to begin recording what we've paid thus far on a job. So what I'm going to do here is select in the bottom right-hand corner. We've got a few of these different view types. I'm going to select this first one, which represents my standard view. So it's quickly going to remove some of the columns to clear up my view. In my standard view, I'm now going to show my actual column. So about midway down the actual column window, or my show height column window, I have the ability to display my actual cost and cost variance. columns will allow me to record what I've paid so far on the job and keep track of my variance or my balance. Let's go to planning, for example. In my specific template, I already have $300 kind of assigned to this particular item. So we can see my variance is about $4,700. As I update that, it'll update my variance as well, so you can see that I'm simply recording that information. When I go over budget, so for example, in this scenario, I'm entering $2,000 for my actual when my projected amount was going to be $1,840, so it shows that I'm over budget by $160. So it brings to your attention immediately where you're over or under. So as you begin to enter these amounts, you'll see that the variance will continue to track. The totals of your actuals and your variances are going to appear at the bottom of your estimate. So we can see at this point we've got $79,000 paid towards this job, and our variance is a positive $840. So far we've saved about $840 so far. When we save this project or save this estimate, this is going to update the financial information on that first screen in ConstructionSuite. So once we finish saving and we go back to ConstructionSuite and take a look at our today's screen, we're going to notice that our financial graph for the Simpsons residence is going to show us the information we've entered so far. On this graph, notice on the far right, we can see Simpsons residence showing us both that the base estimate and estimated value are the same. So there's no change orders as of yet. In blue, we can see that we're maybe about a fifth or so of the way completed or paid so far on this job. Now the other two bars on the financial graph, the orange and yellow, are going to represent QuickBooks information, purchase orders, and invoice amounts. So we're going to take a look at those in the QuickBooks integration session. So if you're interested in seeing some of that integration, be sure to check that out. If you're not using QuickBooks, you can actually choose which bars are going to display on your graph by clicking on this little button to the right of the filter by section, and you can uncheck those committed costs and invoice amounts. So if you kind of want to clear up your view a little bit, it can help to sometimes remove those from your view. So we've updated our financial graph. If we go back to our estimate, we've seen how our actual cost is updated. Again, on the right-hand sidebar, we can see our estimate costs showing the actuals and variance as well. The cost breakdown, which is the pie chart in the bottom right corner, is going to show us our breakdown of our category costs. So you can see that as I hover over each of these sections, it's going to show me where the kind of how the estimate is lined up. I can see that about 23% of my job is allotted towards the planning category. About 5% is allotted towards foundation, 15% for framing. So you can kind of see how your costs are going to be structured. As you switch throughout the estimate, so if you click on the category and foundation pages, notice how the cost breakdown pie chart is going to update as well. So it's going to give you the breakdown of your subcategories. We can see that about 44% of my framing subcategory, of my framing category is devoted to framing labor. So it kind of gives you a quick breakdown of where your costs stand. Now we've taken a look at how we can record what we've paid so far in the job. Now let's take a look at what happens when you have change orders. So in this scenario we've been building so far, your client decides that they actually wanted to go with that 42 foot gallon or 42 inch gallon water gallon heater, whatever it was that we were doing earlier. So if I go back here to my, where was it? Let's see. Oh, my fireplaces, that's what we were doing. So my prefabricated unit, the original estimate was included for that 1069, but let's just say that the client has thus decided that we actually do want to upgrade and do the 42 inch fireplace instead. So what we can do to account for that is add a change order. Adding a change order requires that you simply take the type column like we had done before but when changing it between option, allowance, and estimate. But this time we're going to take the option and we're going to turn it into a change order. In this wizard, we have the option to create a new change order or add this selection to an existing change order. We're creating a very brand new one, so we'll go ahead and choose the first detail, first item. Clicking next will allow you to include a name and description for this change order. So let's just say, for example, that we're going to go with fireplace upgrade. Of course, we're just including a quick description and name for that change order so we can easily distinguish where this cost is going. The next steps in this wizard, I typically don't touch or modify. So the status, I always leave this pending. The second step here, or this step, is to choose the location in your estimate, so I always leave it where it is. And then we're going to create a second subcategory in this estimate for that change order. So in this scenario, you can see that we've now got a third item here, prefabricated units. Go ahead and mark this change order. And now that we've got that change order added, we can see that it's shaded in yellow. So the items that are going to be marked as change orders are going to appear in yellow. I can include the details for my client. So now that I've got this change order created, I'm going to actually go ahead and delete this particular row and include the amount of the difference. So earlier, the prefabricated unit for the 42-inch fireplace, I'm going to change this method from detail to lump sum and just enter the single quantity cost, which was about $450. So in this scenario, I'm just including the difference. So we've already charged them $1069. The change order is going to result in a difference of $450, so I need to charge the client an additional $450. Keep in mind that the markup is still added to this particular unit. So notice that although I'm entering the cost as $450, my total price is showing $495 because I have that 10% markup. So be sure to keep in mind any markups that might be playing into a factor here. Now that I've added the change order, I want to create a change order document or contract for my client. So in my Reports tab under Customer Reports, I'll select Change Order Documents. In this window, I'm going to select the change order. I only have one at this point. And when you can see, when you do so, you'll see that the description and the information of the items that it includes are listed as well. We have two options as far as how we're going to present this information. You have the proposal option, which would be more of submitting that proposal for your client to review. The contract is going to basically be where they can see how the change order is going to affect their overall budget. So in this scenario, I'm going to create a change order contract. You have a different fixed fee or cost plus contract. Once it creates that document, you'll see that, again, the information regarding the client and project are already pre-populated. The change order name is listed here, as well as the description. And below that, you'll see that it's going to show the original contract amount. There were not any previous contracts or change orders to this contract, so the previous amount or revised contract is going to be the same. But we can see that the $495 is going to represent the cost for this change order, including your markup. So that the new total is going to be $383,000. You have a section where you can include the additional days if it's going to be additional time, and a place where they can sign and accept. By creating this change order contract, you're going to have a written document that outlines that the client agrees to that change, so you're not having to make up for that later. Once a client accepts that change order, you can change the status of the change order from pending to accepted, which will now make that total, or which will add that total of $495 to the project total. You'll notice that you're also going to get a prompt to send this to QuickBooks. Again, we're going to see that more in detail on the QuickBooks integration webinar, so I'm going to go ahead and say no for now. But once that completes the save process for my change order, we're going to see our project total increase to the 419,000 or so. Now we've got that change order. Again, back in the estimates, or excuse me, back on the initial page, we can see there's a slight difference here between our Simpsons residence once we save the estimate. So now that we've added a change order, once we save that estimate, we're going to see that green value update to show that new amount. You're also going to be able to find the change order details in your project overview. So once again you save that estimate, you're going to be able to see the change orders in this window. So the session today, we've taken a look at how to create a new estimate using one of our templates. We've looked at how we can change an estimate so we can add more details, we can delete categories or subcategories. We've shown how the estimate is going to, integrate with your items database if you prefer to use that tool. We've taken a look at creating different reports for our clients and subcontractors and vendors. We've shown how to create a proposal that's going to summarize the information, generate a contract, and then record what we've paid and any changes to the current job. Now that we've spent the time to do all that, let's go ahead and show how we can turn this into a template so that we can use this time and time again. So all the details, all the time we've spent creating this estimate, we can use for a similar project down the road. Let's just say that I wanted to create, or that this Simpsons residence is typically pretty common to all new construction for me. So I can take this estimate and save it as a template. So if I were to do so, when I hit File, Save As, rather than saving it to a project folder, I'm going to select my template folder, choose Estimating, and then one of the folders from that. So for example, for my residential, I'm going to create a template called New Construction Template and hit OK. When you save a document as a template, you're able to remove quantities, costs, resource information, or QuickBooks or actual details. So if you wanted to remove those, for example, you want to keep the cost so you can kind of see what you use on previous jobs, but the quantities are going to update. You can certainly go through and remove those. Again, if you want your resources to be there, so let's just say that Bishop and Brothers and our Abernathy Brothers supply contacts that we've assigned are going to be common for our jobs. I'm going to leave those in my estimates and simply go ahead and select Remove and Continue. This is going to remove all of the quantities, so you're going to see all of those turn to 0. My costs still are still there, as well as my resources for those certain items. So we can see on my Resource tab, where was it? Let's see, my framing section. We can see that all of my resources are still within the estimate, so it's going to save me time later on. Now I created that estimate template to use in the future when I create a new job and go through that estimate wizard. So if I go back to my estimating tab and if I select the Launch Estimate Wizard, when I choose to use a predefined estimate, I'm now going to find that my new construction template that I just created is going to appear in this list of templates, which it looks like I already actually had a new construction template, so I've got 2 of them. But now I can see that it appears in this list, so I can use for a new job rather than having to go through all of those changes. So it's certainly going to save you a lot of time when you create your own template that's going to eliminate much of the getting started steps that you might need to take. All in all, we've seen today how the ConstructionSuite estimating system is going to allow you to create estimates that are powerful. They have a lot of flexibility and customization. It allows you to keep track of your estimates and costs. Allows you to account for assigning your subcontractors so you can keep track of who's responsible for these different sections. You can create reports and documents, also track insurance. generate beautiful, custom-looking, professional reports for your clients, and then do it all again with being able to create that as a template. So a lot of information covered today. As you have additional questions, feel free to get in touch with any one of us here at UDA. My name, again, is going to be Rachel Pickens, and you're more than welcome to get in touch with me. My contact information is going to be that main number on file. Our main number for our website is 800-700-8321. My direct extension is 290, so you're more than welcome to give me a call here or any one of our product specialists. Or you can reach me via email at rpickens@uda1.com. So again, if you have additional questions or if there's anything we can help you with, feel free to get in touch.